Good morning. Welcome to Mountain Vista Unitarian Universalist Congregation. So glad that you could be with us this morning. I want to take this opportunity to ask you to silence your electronic devices. Also, while you're doing that, I'll call your attention to the order of service. It's quite a bit different this week. We are winding down our summer of order of service free fly zone. And I have had a lot of fun this week. So you see, the first part of the service is about making time and space. That's what we do here every Sunday when we gather. It's important that we establish that this is a sacred time and place. And the first parts of the service are an attempt to do that. The second and perhaps, main body of the service today will be connecting and attuning. And that comes out of some mindfulness practices and literature that I've been indulging myself in recently. So we will hopefully, during that second half or second part of the service, be connecting to ourselves, to each other, to our environment, and attuning to ourselves, to each other, and the environment. And the last part is integration, where hopefully we will integrate the experiences that we have had here together in our own being, and integrate them into our living as we walk outside these doors and into the week. So that's the order of service. I'd also like to point out that we are a welcoming congregation. That means that we welcome you because of your differences. We welcome you because of your cultural background, your ethnicity, your economic situation, your political affiliation, your sexual orientation, your choice of sports teams, whatever you come with. I even welcome you, John. This is true. I'm a Sun Devil. I have to welcome Wildcats here. So. You're welcome here. And, that is both a practice and an intention. In fact, it's even more, I think, of an intention than a practice, right? Because we don't always do it well. Can we do better at being a welcoming congregation, at being welcoming individuals? Because we welcome more than just demographics. What is embedded in that welcome is that we welcome challenge. We welcome the invitation to grow. And if I name something that makes you feel a bit defensive, either in the welcome or in the course of the service, that may be the first clue that you have been invited to a place of growth. Because we're not done growing. Are you? Are you complete? Have you reached your most perfect state? Are you done evolving spiritually, occupationally, romantically? Are you done evolving in any way whatsoever? Or isn't that, in fact, what draws you to this very place, to a faith tradition of constant revision in the pursuit of truth and justice and love? So welcome is a challenge. It is a constant invitation. And it is not always comfortable. It's not always comfortable, but we welcome growth. In fact, were we spiritual savants, we would welcome all things, right? We would welcome all things. If we were strong, we would welcome all things. If we were wise, we would welcome all things. And so let us strive to welcome both the confirming and the uncomfortable. Let us even welcome boredom. Let us welcome boredom. I don't suppose you'd be here listening to me if you didn't welcome boredom. But wait a minute, should we really welcome boredom? Because, that doesn't really sound right. Boredom is just, what emotion does boredom elicit? It's not even disgust, it's just sort of, ugh, right? I remember sitting in a 6th grade math class, or maybe it was French, and being so bored. I was never bored in church, which is why I'm here. But math and French, oh my gosh. And math took us to the moon with slide rule and a calculator. And the wooing that I could have wooed had I learned French just a little bit better. But instead of seeing those grand possibilities, I was bored. Oh my goodness, learning how to conjugate that equation was like an infinity of dust motes. Thank you. Y'all quick. It was like an infinity of dust motes sloughed off from the wings of dead moths. I mean, it was just boring. I also remember summer days spent at my parents' cabin. It was hot and it was still, and I didn't want to go outside, and I didn't want to read a book, and dang it, no, I did not want to take a nap. And the massive electric downpour of thunder and rain that would energize the world later that day was a lifetime away. 2 hours. That's a lifetime. I was so bored, I remember leaning over the back of the couch and counting the dead flies on the windowsill. But counting was so boring that I wasn't really even doing that. I was just looking at the dead flies. I remember boredom not as a welcome thing. But as I say that, it occurs to me that there is something funny going on here, because I said, I remember boredom. You know what that means? It means 2 things. It means A, that boredom was significant somehow. And B, that boredom is a thing of the past. And part of that is probably just my stage of life right now, working, young family. But I can't help but wonder if there's a part of that that is cultural as well. Part of this seems technological. And so it might be quite common that we all can only remember boredom. When was the last time you were bored? Now not included. Like if I'm bored for a nanosecond, I'm on Facebook, or I'm searching the net, or I can flip on my TV, or I can do my chores. Chores may be a drag, but they are not boring. And then of course there's my kids, holy cow. A father of 2 and a father of these 2 is never bored. So, and you know, I say that and realize boredom and exhaustion are also not the same thing. So it's funny, I'm trying to give a reflection on the virtues of boredom. And yet, I don't even know what boredom is anymore. I mean, how can I? I'm too busy. Too busy. And yet. So the motivation for this reflection came from my mother-in-law. And I forgot what precisely prompted the conversation. We were either thinking about ourselves or probably watching some teenagers. And we were noticing the constant and unresisted temptation to be plugged in, to be online, to be occupied. If there is a momentary lull in interest, we immediately seek to fill it. And today we can. Our technology has given us the ability to do just that, and we fill our lives with input after input after input after input. And that's pretty cool sometimes, but it seems like something is lost in that bargain. Or it did to Katie's mom and I. We began to lament the loss of boredom. We recalled to each other those lazy summer days or endless road trips where there was just nothing to do. Or at least it seemed that way. And they seemed horrible at the time, and yet there we were remembering them fondly. Well, why is that? What is so heartening about that particular kind of dissatisfaction that it makes us nostalgic? Is it just that these days we feel so pressed for time that we envy those who can be bored? Are we simply irritated by those who should and can be bored, but waste it on what seems like frivolous selfies and gossipy tweets? Are we just curmudgeon-y folk? Or is it something else, something that has to do more with our soul? Is it that we suspect or remember that if you simmer in boredom long enough, something begins to happen? Lo and behold, you have ideas, your own ideas. It's hard to have ideas of your own if you are constantly plugged into the internet, or really any kind of conversation. It's not just the internet. If you're constantly in a conversation, there's little time to reflect. There's little time to develop ideas on your own. And deeper yet, I suspect that fermented boredom distills creativity of all kinds, not just ideas. When I was on those endless road trips or staring at those flies and wishing for rain and unsatisfied with any suggested activity, I was also digging into my imagination. And look, it wasn't always Pulitzer worthy, right? But without knowing it, digging into my imagination, daydreaming, wishing the day away, was also an exercise in getting in touch with myself. It was an exercise in tuning into me. And in some ways, that was uncomfortable. There was some growth taking place. I wanted to do something else, right? And yet in other ways, secretly, perhaps subconsciously, it was deeply satisfying. And if you no longer have that opportunity, or if you disregard it for trivia, if you are a stranger to boredom, it may be that you are a stranger to yourself. Boredom then is something to be missed and something to be welcomed. And if you are growing up unfamiliar with boredom because you have never experienced it, that might be something to worry about. So I invite you to let your mind linger on this question of boredom. What happens when you're bored? Is boredom different now for you than it was 4 years ago or 40 years ago? How does your boredom come to an end? Which is another way of asking, what grew out of your boredom? Let us attune to that, to yourself, and through you, to others. I think that's what Joe was telling me. I could be wrong. I noticed not all of you were clapping, so that might be good. I don't know.
Ron, we welcome non-clappers,
We
too.
welcome clappers and non-clappers and 2/4 and 3/16 and 2 times 46. Yeah, singing and freedom. That is not a boring land, right? Unless it is. Because it might be. I mean, the thing about boredom is that it can beset you in the midst of any activity. In the midst of clapping, probably not, but maybe. I mean, boredom does not mean that you are not doing something. It means that you don't care about what you are doing. And so Katie's mom and I lament the plugged-in generation, and yet upon reflection, I do not think that they are not bored with their selfies. They may be the most bored, but the least attentive to it. I consider myself part of that generation, by the way. Maybe aspirationally. Earlier I was joking some about how busy I was and how that meant that I was never able to be bored. But you know, that is not true. The first part is true. I am quite occupied. But can't you be busy and bored at the same time? Of course, the opposite of boredom isn't just doing something. The opposite of boredom is earnest engagement. And busyness is definitely not the same as earnest engagement. So Lisa, don't just get busy. Unless it's a good song. I mean, look, sometimes I get fatigued while writing a sermon. I pull up Facebook, and this occupies some time. It lets some air in, but you know, I wasn't actually bored until I disengaged from writing and popped into a frillish occupier of time. Now, boredom isn't that there is nothing to do. You can be bored in the midst of endless possibility. Boredom is a state of not being invigorated by anything. The key here, though, is that this doesn't make boredom bad. It just makes it the end of the life cycle of interest. And like the end of all life cycles, the decomposition of interest creates the seed bed and soil from which inspiration may take root and rise. So do not be afraid of boredom. Do not chase it away with the occupying force of the frivolous and trivial. Welcome it. Boredom is not a negative state. It is a state of decomposition, which is to say, of transformation. It is your interest decomposing and your engagement lying fallow. And so in this, like Katie's mom and I weren't lamenting the loss of boredom exactly. We were lamenting the loss of a kind of deep engagement made available by boredom, by those road trips, by that particular kind of disinterest. Boredom is the beginning of inspiration. This particular kind of dissatisfaction that allows you to tune into you. It is not a place where you want to be, yet we would be nowhere without it. If boredom is a way of tuning into oneself, then it is a practice of mindfulness. You may even wish to cultivate boredom and see it as an invitation into mindfulness. Or at least the next time that you feel its dread disinterest, do not push it away with the boredom-killing technologies that we have used to endanger our ability to achieve boredom. Let it simmer. Let it ferment. Let it tune you into you and the world. Let boredom refine you. Welcome it. Learn from it. Breathe in it and see what happens. Let your interest die and allow your inspiration to live. And so we integrate that into our lives, into the life of this church. We take that from a process of the internal into relationship with each other and the outside world, the world beyond our walls. As we do so, I want to make a few announcements. The Religious Education Committee is recruiting new teachers. The goal is to have enough teachers so that each teacher will only have to teach every 3 or 4 weeks. The curriculum and materials are ready to go, and training will be provided. There's no experience necessary. If you're interested in helping, please see Adria or Laura. Are they in here today? Laura's over in Goldberg, or see Sabella after the service. So if your fermenting boredom leads you in that direction, there's opportunity there. If you are interested in joining a group of Mountain Vistans for lunch and conversation at a nearby restaurant, please see Jan Hatunen, who is in the back there, or Bob Grigsby, who is over here. And more exciting and detailed announcements like these and upcoming events are sent via email each Friday. And if you want to be on that list, see a greeter before you leave. And I would like to let you know that tomorrow night, I will be leading the prayer vigil for Rosa Robles at Southside Presbyterian, where she has taken sanctuary. I invite you all to come. It would be wonderful. We have several members of our congregation, I think at least 6, who are actively involved in providing care to Rosa in some kind of another. And so these prayer vigils are not only for Rosa, but for the people who are helping Rosa, those people behind the organization, those people involved with staying with her, with supplying her food, with making telephone calls. It's for everybody. It's for the entire community that is helping Rosa.
What time is that?
That's at 7 o'clock. It'll be for half an hour.
Can I interrupt you again?
Yeah.
One more announcement. Wednesday night, join us at Monterey Court for nice food, drinks, and music. Monterey Court.
And so at the vigil tomorrow night, I will be reading a letter, and I'm going to read that letter to you right now. After service today, if you would like to sign that letter, it will be made available to you to do so. Marian Erickson will be sitting at a table, and she'll have the letter. You can sign the letter. We will send the letter. We will show the letter to Rosa and the organization at Southside, and then we will send it to Secretary of Department of Homeland Security Johnston, and hopefully that will have some effect, as a number of letters are coming in every day to his office. So the letter reads as follows. Dear Secretary Johnson, at Mountain Vista Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Tucson, Arizona, we participate in a faith tradition based on the principles of the inherent worth and dignity of every person, democracy, and the interconnection of all life. With democracy in the center of our principles, we hold the rule of law in great esteem. However, law is created for the sake of love and justice. Law must neither be created or obeyed at the expense of love and justice. And when law is not for the sake of love and justice, tragedy may be inevitable. To witness this, I ask you to consider Rosa Robles, for whom tragedy is imminent in the form of a deportation order that would take her away from her 2 sons and her husband. Can you imagine your government forcing you away from your family? This kind of force and the enforcement of this order and law is opposed to love and opposed to justice. Tucson has been Rosa's home since 1999. She's not only a faithful volunteer at her church, Santa Monica Parish, often undertaking cleaning of maintenance work to support the parish. Her sons, Jose and Gerardo, are excellent students, and Rosa helps them with their studies and volunteers at their school. Rosa works hard to support her family financially, emotionally, and spiritually. Rosa is a contributing member of the Tucson Committee and is a perfect example of an individual who should have had her case administratively closed long ago. And so as a people gathered in faith, we ask that you immediately stop the deportation of Rosa Robles. You see, we at MVUU are also in the tradition of Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, and Theodore Parker. These foundational persons to our faith tradition all participated in and supported civil disobedience when faced with laws that were opposed to love and justice. It was Thoreau who wrote, "If the machine of government is of such a nature that it requires you to be the agent of injustice to another, then I say break the law." We are currently witnessing a state of affairs wherein our countrymen and women are indeed being asked to be agents of injustice to another, and it is time for this to stop. So this deportation order must be resisted until the policy is adjusted. Thus, we will continue to support Rosa and others like her as she seeks sanctuary in the face of being taken away from her family. Again, as a people gathered in faith, And in the name of love and justice, we ask that you immediately stop the deportation of Rosa Robles. Sincerely, Reverend Ron Ferris and the undersigned.